you did not do it wrong. The journal in the drawer, the one with the gold lettering and the 40 prompts, the one that asked you to list the traits you dislike in others. You filled it out honestly. You sat in the low blue light. You wrote the difficult sentences. And for about 3 days, you felt something move. Then nothing. You assumed the failure was yours. It wasn't. The journal did exactly what it was built to do, which was nothing. It gave you the sensation of dissent without the dissent. It let your ego interview itself in a quiet room and call the transcript a confession. That is not shadow work. That is the most comfortable thing you have ever done, disguised as the most dangerous. And Carl Jung, the man whose name they printed on the cover, spent his life warning you against exactly this. The thing they are selling you is a vocabulary, not a method. Shadow work has been flattened into a list. Triggers, prompts, inner child worksheets. A tidy retrieval operation where you reach into the dark, pull out a disowned trait, label it, and reabsorb it like a returned library book. The promise is integration in 30 days. The promise is that the shadow is content, material that belongs to you, sitting in storage, waiting to be collected. But read what Jung actually wrote. In Aion, his 1951 study of the self, he called the shadow a moral problem, one that challenges the entire ego personality. Not a worksheet, a problem. He said confronting it demands considerable moral effort, and that certain parts of it resist with an obstinacy almost impossible to influence. Almost impossible to influence. That is not the language of a journal prompt. That is the language of a man describing something that fights back. Here is the distinction the marketplace had to delete to make the sale. The shadow they sell you is yours, a small bag of personal flaws, embarrassing and reclaimable. The shadow Jung described has a deeper flaw. Beneath your personal failings lies something that is not personal at all, autonomous, older than you, and entirely indifferent to your 40 prompts. They sold you the bag, they painted over the flaw. Call the counterfeit by its name, the domesticated shadow. A predator with its teeth filed down, kept in a drawer, fed once a quarter, and mistaken for a pet. And there is a reason the single most important warning Jung's closest student ever gave about this work never appears on any journal page. We will reach her. First, what the real method actually was. Jung did not journal his way through the dark. He built a method he called the transcendent function, and it is the precise opposite of writing prompts to yourself. A prompt is a monologue. You ask, you answer, the same mind on both ends of the pen. The transcendent function is a dialogue, and the second voice is not yours. In his 1916 essay of that name, Jung described holding the unbearable tension between your conscious position and whatever rises against it from below, refusing to resolve it, until a third thing breaks through, something neither side authored. He built a practice for entering that tension. He called it active imagination, the deliberate act of letting an unconscious figure become real enough to speak, to argue, to refuse you. Not a symbol you decode, a presence you negotiate with. And Jung warned repeatedly, gravely, that this was dangerous. He cautioned that active imagination could open a door a fragile ego could not close, that it could flood a person with contents strong enough to drown them. He did not prescribe it to everyone. He handled it the way you handle live current. Sit with the difference. The journal promises safety and delivers nothing. The real method promises nothing, and that is exactly why it can deliver. The danger was never a flaw in the process. The danger was the process. This is what Jung meant when he wrote that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Not by listing it, by facing it, the way you would face another person who means you harm. And now, the flaw beneath the flaw. Because here is what the disowned traits model cannot survive. It assumes everything you find down there is yours, your repression, your wound, your reclaimable gold. It assumes the dark is always personal, and therefore always integrable. Jung did not believe that. He spent his late work attacking a doctrine called privatio boni, the old theological claim that evil has no substance of its own, that it is merely the absence of good, a shadow cast by missing light. In Aion, and again in Answer to Job, he rejected it outright. Evil, he insisted, is not an absence. It is a positive, autonomous reality, a force with its own weight, its own will, its own gravity. And his closest collaborator went further. This is the sentence that never reaches the journal. Marie-Louise von Franz, who worked beside Jung for 3 decades, wrote an entire book on this exact danger. Shadow and evil in fairy tales. Her warning is surgical. The personal shadow, she said, you labor to integrate. But there exists another order of darkness, absolute evil. And the gravest psychological error you can make is to try to integrate that. Some things in the deep are not lost parts of you, waiting to come home. They are autonomous. They are hostile. And the correct response is not to welcome them. It is to recognize them, name them, and refuse them. Von Franz read the old fairy tales as field manuals for precisely this. The stories where the hero does not embrace the dark figure, but flees it or destroys it. Because the tale knew something the journal forgot. The wrong thing integrated does not become you. You become it. That is the warning they could not sell. You cannot print some of what you find may consume you on a wellness product. You cannot monetize a process that might not end in healing. So they kept the word, shadow, and amputated the danger. They sold you the descent, with the trapdoor nailed shut. So what is real shadow work? The kind no worksheet can hold. It is not retrieval, it is relationship, with something inside you that has its own will, that can answer back, deceive you, test you, and on rare and serious occasions refuse to be saved. It is a dialectic, not a diary, a confrontation between 2 real powers, only one of which is you. This is why it was always meant to be slow, why Jung ringed it with caution, why every serious tradition placed a teacher between the seeker and the dark, not to gatekeep, but to keep you alive while you learn the difference between the shadow you must carry and the evil you must refuse. The journal asked you to make a list. The work asks you to sit across from something that may be stronger than you, and to stay, without flinching, without fleeing, and without the fatal sentimentality that insists everything monstrous is only a wounded child in disguise. Some of it is, some of it is not. Learning to tell the two apart, that is the entire discipline. That is the apprenticeship the marketplace removed, so the product could scale. Now look again at the journal in your drawer. You were never failing at shadow work. You were succeeding completely at its imitation. The empty pages were not a sign of your weakness. They were the safest thing you have ever done. You stood at the lip of the actual descent, and a clean little book handed you a pen and promised you would never have to go down. That is why it did nothing. Nothing was the product. The dark you have been circling is not waiting to be journaled. It is waiting to be met, on its terms, with your eyes open, carrying the one piece of knowledge no prompt will ever give you, that not everything down there is yours. And not everything down there can be saved, including, perhaps, the part of you still hoping the journal would have worked.